Shenzhen was once called a miracle city, but now it's struggling under the weight of an economic downturn. Everywhere you go, you see homeless people. Many of them come from other places with dreams of finding a good job in Shenzhen, but things didn't go as planned. They ran out of money and couldn't find work. With no ways to pay for even a cheap hotel, they now sleep on the streets. These scenes have become a painful reminder that the so-called prosperous city has deep problems hiding under its surface.
Have
you noticed something? 10 years ago, when Shenzhen had just over 10 million people, late-night food stores were still packed at 3 a.m. Now the population is nearly 20 million, but Longgang's industrial area is empty, Boan's villages are quiet, and even top shopping districts like Coastal City and Dongmen are full of for rent signs. So where did all the people go?
Meanwhile, office buildings in Shenzhen are half empty. The skyline is filled with tall buildings, but more and more offices are sitting unused. Startups are shutting down one after another. Even the big tech companies are cutting jobs and tightening budgets. There are constant rumors on the street about businesses pulling out or closing down. Shopping areas are filled with discount signs, but hardly any customers. Shenzhen, once praised as the city of innovation, seems to be entering a time of serious slowdown and major change.
给你们看看 深圳一直在建楼
Let me show you. Shenzhen just keeps building more and more office buildings. But do we really need this many? In the city center, nearly 40% to 50% of offices are sitting empty. Are there really that many people still coming to Shenzhen to work?
再这样下去的话，
If this keeps going, how much longer can ordinary workers survive? This is the real situation now, even if it's hard to believe. I've worked in finance in Shenzhen for 8 years. On the surface, it looks busy, traffic everywhere. But in reality, this is a city where the average salary is about 6,000 yuan and many people are paying more than 10,000 yuan a month in loan repayments. Big companies are cutting salaries and laying people off. Small businesses are on the edge of closing. The people running shops on the street are barely getting by. After a whole month of hard work, most of the profit goes to the landlord. Maybe only 1 or 2 stores in an entire block are really making money. A lot of people are just trying to keep their credit score alive, borrowing from one place to pay another, always under pressure. If I had to sum it up in 2 words, I'd say, just surviving. Experts say the average person in China has more than 300,000 yuan in savings. But if you ask me, the average worker in Shenzhen is probably 300,000 yuan in debt. That's the real situation for most of us. The unemployment rate in China is terrifying. A while ago, I tried to hire someone for a part-time job just feeding birds. It paid a little over 1,000 yuan a month. I posted a job online and over 400 people applied for a job that pays only about 15 yuan an hour. That should tell you how bad the job market is. And it's not just unskilled workers. People with skills are also struggling to find work.
Now, to survive, people are fighting over jobs that pay just over 1,000 yuan a month. Jobs at factories that pay only about 15 yuan an hour are now being fought over too.
都说今年找工作难。
Everyone says it's hard to find work this year, and today I really saw it for myself. I walked past the factory and saw a job agent shouting 15 yuan an hour, and there were over 30 people surrounding him, all trying to get that job. Just 15 yuan an hour, and it's still that competitive.
今年的人到底是怎么了？
What's going on with people this year? Even metal factories offering just 14 yuan an hour have crowds of people wanting to work there. You can see the job agent smiling, handing out cigarettes and buying water for people. I really don't get it. If it's that bad, maybe it's time to go home. But if wages stay this low, soon even the 14 yuan an hour jobs might disappear. Then what's the point?
A car mechanic shared his own story. Because of the bad economy, he's even had to stop eating meat with his meals.
兄弟们，今年注定是难熬的一年呐。
This year is really tough, especially for us in the auto repair business. A lot of repair shops have shut down already, maybe 20% to 30% nationwide. We just can't hold on. I don't even add meat to my dinner anymore because I can't afford it. I can't even pay my workers on time. I don't know how other industries are doing, but I've never felt pressure like this before. Labor costs keep rising, rent is going up, and customer flow keeps dropping. Even platforms like Douyin aren't working as well anymore. Plus, many people have switched to electric cars, so we see fewer gasoline cars coming in for repairs or maintenance. I think in a few years, this whole industry might be gone.
Right now, Shenzhen's manufacturing industry is going through its toughest time ever. In the past year alone, over 2,000 factories have shut down. The production lines that were once busy are now quiet. Workers line up to collect their severance pay, while factory owners are stuck trying to decide whether to stay or leave. There are several reasons why Shenzhen has fallen into this difficult situation. First, the global economic slowdown has hit Shenzhen's manufacturing sector hard. Since 2022, the war between Russia and Ukraine, high global inflation, and interest rate hikes in the US and Europe have all led to weaker global demand. Take electronics as an example. Sales of smartphones and laptops have dropped sharply since 2023. As a result, many of Shenzhen's electronics factories are now facing a severe shortage of orders. On top of that, trade tensions between China and the US still haven't fully gone away. Because of the uncertainty, companies are now more cautious about doing export business. According to China's customs data, exports to the US fell by 4.5% year-on-year in 2024, which directly hurts many of Shenzhen's export-driven factories. Second, the rising cost of running a factory is eating into profits. A woman named Dan Dan said, in recent years, many factories have moved out of Shenzhen because it's just too expensive to run a business here. Prices, land, and labor costs are all high. That's why many manufacturers are moving to places like Dongguan, Huizhou, or even further inland. These places are cheaper. But when manufacturing moves out, the service industry also suffers, especially restaurants and small shops, because there are fewer people around with money to spend. As a first-tier city, Shenzhen has high living costs. Workers' wages, insurance, housing, and food costs are all going up. As labor gets more expensive, many foreign orders are moving to cheaper places in Southeast Asia. Countries like Vietnam, India, and Bangladesh are building up their manufacturing industries quickly. They're now getting a lot of the orders that used to go to Shenzhen. Industry insiders say that many Western clients have moved production to these countries to cut costs. Also, Shenzhen is trying to upgrade its industries. The local government is pushing for high-quality manufacturing, encouraging companies to move into high-end and smart manufacturing. But for small factories that rely on simple labor and don't have much money or tech, this shift is really hard to make. Some people also believe that competition inside the industry itself is another big reason why so many factories are closing down.
兄弟们，今天是2025年的5月15号。
Today's May 15th, 2025. Since February, e-commerce businesses have been shutting down, and factories have been going bankrupt one after another, and who knows how many more surprises are still coming. Here's what I think the problems are. First, a lot of factories got stuck, because other companies went bankrupt and didn't pay what they owed. That wiped out everyone's profits. Second, price wars destroyed product quality. Everyone's undercutting each other. If I lower my price, someone else goes even lower. In places like Guizhou, where they make lights, there's no such thing as the lowest price, only lower. Third, even when someone comes up with a good design or product, it gets copied right away. Within days, you'll see 10 or 20 versions of it, all at cheaper prices. With this kind of business environment, how can anyone make money? That's why this year is especially brutal. China's economy is no longer growing as fast as before. We've entered the stock market era, where the pie isn't getting any bigger, just being split in new ways. So, now it's big fish eating little fish and little fish eating shrimp. It's a time of major shake-ups. Any company without real core strengths and that only competes on price with no standards or principles will be wiped out. Price wars won't help you succeed. They just guarantee you'll never get ahead.
Actually, the struggles of Chinese businesses aren't just happening in Shenzhen. Companies across the country are having a hard time. On May 31st, China's National Bureau of Statistics released the latest Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, for May. The data shows that the PMI for May was 49.5%, a slight increase of 0.5 percentage points from the previous month. However, it still remains below the 50% mark for the second month in a row, which means the manufacturing sector is continuing to shrink. Looking at business sizes, large companies had a PMI of about 51%, up 1.5 percentage points, returning to growth territory. Medium-sized companies dropped to 47.5%, down 1.3 points. Small businesses rose slightly to 49.3%, up 0.6 points. Overall, small and medium-sized businesses are still struggling the most. Among the sub-indices, the production index was 50.7%, showing that factory activity is picking up slightly. The new orders index rose to 49.8%, suggesting that market demand is starting to improve. However, several key indicators, including new orders, raw material inventory, and employment, are still all below the 50% threshold. which signals contraction. Senior statistician Zhao Qinghe from the Bureau Service Sector Survey Center noted that a brief pause in the U.S.-China trade conflict helped boost both imports and exports in May. The new export orders index reached 47.5%, and the import index reached 47.1%, both showing notable increases compared to the previous month. Some Chinese companies that trade with the U.S. said they've seen a clear rebound in foreign orders, and the trade situation is showing signs of recovery. As for the broader economy, the non-manufacturing business activity index in May was 50.3%, just 0.1 points lower than the previous month, still barely above the growth line. But economists are issuing fresh warnings. Deflation in China is becoming a serious concern. A recent Bloomberg survey estimates that China's Consumer Price Index, CPI, will grow just 0.3% in 2025, the lowest since 2023. Bloomberg also noted that overall prices in China have been falling for 2 years. In fact, for the past 3 months, consumer inflation has been negative, which means prices are actively declining. Dennis Shen, an economist with German rating company Scope, commented that while recent tariff exemptions have offered some support to industrial production and exports, deflation remains the core problem for China's economy. Bloomberg adds that these exemptions provide limited help in an economy suffering from ongoing price wars, a slumping real estate sector, and weak demand. Deflation is eating away at both companies' profits and workers' incomes, creating a vicious cycle, and this could lead to a much deeper economic crisis. When you dig deeper into what's causing this vicious cycle, many believe the real root lies in China's authoritarian political system. At the heart of this system is strict central control. All major economic and industrial decisions must follow top-down orders from the Communist Party. Even a city like Shenzhen, which is considered one of the most market-oriented in China, must keep its local development plans fully aligned with the central government's policies. This kind of rigid, one-size-fits-all approach means that local governments can't quickly or flexibly respond to changes in the market. They're often stuck, waiting for instructions from above, even when fast action is needed. For example, when global demand drops sharply and foreign trade orders shrink, market economies can often buffer the impact through flexible adjustments in prices and supply-demand structures. But small and medium enterprises in Shenzhen have to seek solutions within the constraint of fixed industry policies, environmental restrictions, and financing controls. Especially during the pandemic, many businesses wanted to save themselves and return to work, but layers of approval processes and instructions caused them to miss the precious window of opportunity. This is a real reflection of how the centralization of power severely suppresses the adaptability of local governments and markets. Secondly, under the Chinese Communist Party system, political security and ideological security are always prioritized over economic development. For a city like Shenzhen, which is highly market-driven and heavily reliant on international capital and technology, this security-first strategy stands out. Strict regulations in recent years on industries like the internet, semiconductors, and other high-tech fields, as well as the intense control over online public opinion and data security, have made some companies hesitant to innovate and expand their markets. Thirdly, in the CCP system, the government plays a crucial role in resource allocation. Core elements like land, credit, and talent are often allocated in favor of state-owned enterprises or power capital. For instance, large industrial parks, key laboratories, and emerging industry clusters in Shenzhen are still largely dominated by state-owned capital. Meanwhile, private small and medium-sized enterprises often struggle to access land resources or favorable financing. They can only survive on high rents and fierce market competition. This uneven resource distribution directly weakens the diversity and vitality of Shenzhen's market economy, making it difficult for small businesses with real innovation and potential to thrive. In recent years, the fluctuating policy environment within the CCP system have brought immense uncertainty to entrepreneurs. For example, environmental inspections under dual carbon emission reduction goals, repeated crackdowns on internet platforms, and sudden economic regulatory storms often unfold in a highly politicized manner. In such an environment where policies are unpredictable and execution standards are unclear, entrepreneurs find it hard to make long-term investment plans and often remain in a wait-and-see mode. Some business owners complain, the policies change every day and we don't dare to invest. For a city like Shenzhen, which is known for its flexibility and market vitality, the lack of stable policies is particularly fatal. As entrepreneurs lose confidence and hesitate to expand investment or research and development, it ultimately weakens the city's overall innovation capacity and resilience. At its core, the CCP's corrupt system is deeply embedded in every level of government and the market. It has become a hidden shackle that restricts the heavy development of businesses. This corruption is not just about the greed of individual officials. It's a systemic problem of rent-seeking and transferring benefits. Over time, it has distorted the economic environment. The corrupt system causes serious distortions on how resources are allocated. In key areas like land transfers, project approvals, and financial credit, companies often have to provide benefits to officials or networks of influence. This raises hidden costs and takes away funds that should go into research, development, and production. Private businesses especially must spend huge amounts of manpower and resources building connections to get necessary permits. The corruption also worsens the monopoly of state-owned enterprises and power capital, giving companies with government backing more resources and policy support. This creates a vicious cycle. State enterprises advance, private enterprises retreat. Even more seriously, corruption makes the rule of law and business environment unpredictable. Officials often base their decisions on relationships and personal gain. They selectively enforce laws or turn a blind eye. Entrepreneurs live in constant uncertainty. Over time, entrepreneurs lose the motivation to innovate. They focus more on winning connections rather than winning with products or innovation. The irony is, amid all this, the CCP central leadership continues to loudly promote slogans about raising wages. On May 26th, the Central Committee and the State Council jointly issued a document on improving the modern enterprise system with Chinese characteristics. They again stressed the need to establish a reasonable wage growth mechanism, promoting medium and long-term incentives for listed companies, and stable dividends. This is the second time in 6 months they have pushed the message of raising wages. The previous time was in a plan to boost consumption, which made increasing income for urban and rural residents the top priority among 8 actions. On social media, many question this, saying, companies are about to collapse. Where will the money come from to raise wages? And, with inflation, raising wages is meaningless. Some even warn that local officials may force companies to fake wage data to complete this political task, worsening conflicts between officials and the public. With the economy declining, companies struggling, and people's wallets shrinking, these slogans seem more like unrealistic political theater than real solutions. In fact, the Central Economic Work Conference has already acknowledged that the biggest problem for China's economy this year is insufficient demand. Official data is also alarming. In 2024, the national average consumer spending per person is only about 28,200 yuan, less than 1/9 of the United States. Retail sales of consumer goods are expected to grow between 2% and 4.8%. Housing prices continue to fall, with most of the 70 large and medium cities seeing declines in both new and second-hand home prices. Businesses are also struggling. Profits for industrial enterprises above a certain size have dropped by 3.3%, and the automobile manufacturing industry has plummeted by 8%. In this situation, talks about raising wages remain just words.